Hello, J-Spot peeps. Please stay tuned till the end for a special tribute to George Floyd. Hello again, J-Spot peeps, and welcome back to the J-Spot. I'm your host, Mr. J, and for those of you who have subscribed thus far, thank you. We really do appreciate your support. And for those of you who are stopping by for the first time, welcome. And we hope if you enjoy this content, you will subscribe. Drop us a like, drop us a comment, and share this content with your family and friends. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Today I'm going to continue in our second part of our four-part series entitled The Real Ape Story, the pattern of learned behavior in the urban neighborhoods. This particular video is titled The Real Ape Story, the Traffic Light Syndrome. So let's get right to it. This is an article that our four-part series article that I wrote about 12 years ago. And it starts off like this. Have you ever turned on the news and heard about some tragic car accident in a neighborhood and a reporter is standing there interviewing someone in the neighborhood? There's always one thing that stands out about these kind of interviews, and that's the statement, "They speed through here all the time." And I just don't understand why they haven't put up a traffic light or erected a stop sign there. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Next thing you know, the neighborhood is outraged and everyone gathers at town hall meetings to shake their collective fists at local politicians. Episodes such as this mirror the legacy of the gun control debate in the United States. And just like the traffic light syndrome of local communities, most of the time these debates of shock and outrage only included those affected by the tragedy. In other words, people outside of the affected community never bothered attending meetings until and unless it concerned them and their own family's safety. In the wake of countless mass killings at local schools and university, a phenomenon that has taken on the characteristics of a runaway train, more and more communities are melding their collective voices and shaking their collective shock and outraged fists at local, state, and federal politicians. Unfortunately, that runaway train has gathered ahead of its own steam, and sadly, some of the stops that it makes are stops that a great many people in this country do not want to see removed from the train schedule. In other words, what I'm saying here is that a lot of the outrage that we hear about gun control in this country, people don't care about those stops being in other communities, about those gun control, lax gun control laws in other communities. They don't care if the train stops in someone else's community. Matter of fact, they don't want them to stop in other communities. They don't want them to pass by other communities. They want them to keep rolling through and stopping there because there are people that they don't want to see alive. They don't care whether they live or die. But when it stops in their community, then things have to change. And this is not shade about someone losing a child. It's all about what you see with your own two eyes, and do you have the courage to speak up about it when it doesn't affect you? Take, for instance, the more than 500 murders that occurred in Chicago in 2012. Where was the shock and outrage for those children? Who raised their collective fists and voices other than those affected by those tragedies? Where were the advocates for the traffic light that might have saved Hadia Pendleton, the 15-year-old honor student and band major at King's College Prep School in Chicago, who died after a gunman shot her at a park just a week after she performed in President Obama's inauguration? From the looks of things, shock and outrage does not rear their collective heads until the train makes a stop in neighborhoods that really matter, or at least that matter in the minds of some people. Trayvon Martin never reached his 18th birthday. However, as we all know, Trayvon had his life taken by that overzealous wannabe sheriff, George Zimmerman. Zimmerman, whose right to supposedly stand his ground and kill a defenseless unarmed teenager, was being defended by an outraged NRA, shaking their collective fist, and was being challenged by those who finally had the train stop in their neighborhoods and was shaking their collective fist right back at the NRA. In Detroit, several years ago, a 70-year-old high school basketball coach shot and killed one teenager and wounded a second as they attempted to rob him outside the school. The incident was then used to fuel gun rights advocates' claims that all citizens, law-abiding citizens, be armed if they chose to be. Series, I began by describing the results of a learned behavioral experiment using apes in a cage. I then went on to substitute and relate the behavior of the apes to that of inner city children, only for purposes of point, not physical characteristics. This metaphorical use of traffic lights and the silence of the voices who witnessed the behavioral patterns of those in their communities, knowing that sooner or later something bad was bound to happen, yet said nothing, is much the same as those who never warned the children in part 1 of this series. It is only after the fact that people raise their collective voices and shake their collective fist. First, the shock and outrage only extends to those affected locally. No attention paid to communities outside of that area. Moreover, while the ear is pricked by the sound of the train's warning whistle, and we raise our heads to try and see from which direction the train comes, we ignore it if it makes it stop somewhere else. The only time we even acknowledge it is if it stops. Collectively raised voices are accompanied by collectively shed tears. Thanks once again, J-Spot peeps, for spending some of your valuable time here with me in the J-Spot. And make sure, for those of you who haven't, that you subscribe. Give us a like. Share this content with your family and friends and drop us a comment. We would love to have our subscriptions up to 500 before the end of the month, and we are almost in Oakley. And stay tuned for part 3 of this series, The Real Ape Story, Annie Oakley. And please come back to see me, because we have a lot more discovering to do and a lot more purpose to pursue. In the meantime, peace. Little did I know, a George Floyd tribute. Little did I know that morning that it would be my last. The morning came with no forewarning, no ominous forecast. Little did I know when I awakened from my sleep that on that day that I would cry out for my mother and weep. Little did I know that life would say goodbye to me that I would die before that night beneath another's knee. Little did I know of the state the heart of man could be, to think my life that he could take so cold and callously. Little did I know that I was viewed as such a threat, that other men would just stand by as I was put to death. But little did they know that I, as death around me swirled, that on that day that I would die, that I would change the world.